Okay, guys, so this is where things started to get a little bit confusing for some of us. These are the translations of the exponential functions. So I'm going to do this video in 3 parts. I'm going to start with left and right and up and down. And then in part 2, I'm going to do the reflections. So the reflection horizontally, which will also be called over the x-axis, and vertically, which is over the y-axis. And then finally, in the third part, we're going to look at some graphs and see how they shift. And I'm going to try to use Desmos to show you a lot of that. So this is going to be the form that I use for the first 2 videos. So we're focusing solely on the left and the right and the up and the down movement. So those movements happen in these 2 last parts here. So this last one right here, this section, is going to be the change that causes the graph to move. If I can get my pen to work, move left. And things move left when you add to it, and move right. And that happens when you subtract. So it's kind of opposite as you would think, because when you move a graph to the left, you're moving more towards the negative side, but we're going to say that that's a plus. And when you move a graph to the right, you're going towards the positive side, but that's a minus. The reason why that's happening is because it's the move that would bring the graph back towards the origin. So if you move to the left, you'd have to add to get back towards the origin. You move to the right, you'd have to subtract to get towards the origin. That shows up a little bit more in Algebra 2 when you're doing something called factors. Right now, the only thing that you need to remember is that a move to the left will look like plus something in the exponent, and a move to the right looks like minus something in an exponent. The other move that we're talking about in this first video is the moves that happen out here, okay? And those are the changes that cause a graph to move up. And with up and down, up is plus, or down, which is minus. So up and down are what you would think they would be. Up is plus, down is minus. Left and right, left is plus, right is minus. So left and right happen in the exponent. Up and down do not happen in the exponent. They're the big numbers that are at the very, very end of the equation. So we'll do some problems. So the first problem set that I copied here, it says describe the transformations on each exponential function. Assume that the growth decay factor is the parent function. So what they're telling us here is in number 1, the original equation was just 1/2 to the x. So we're trying to see what's different about this one, the one I drew in green, versus what's printed for number 1. So if we take a minute to look at those 2 equations and try to figure out what the difference is. Okay, so the difference is we see this -2 right here in the exponent. I'm going to go back up to my rules, and I see that a move that happens in the exponent is what I circled right here in red, and it's a minus. So when it's minus, that is a move to the right. So when it asks me for this one, what is the transformation? What is the translation? I'm going to say right 2. And that's it. That's the whole thing for number 1. Let's go through and do number 2. So we're assuming that our original equation was 1/3 to the x. So we're going to do the same thing. We're going to take a minute to see what the difference between what I just wrote in green and what the original equation typed for number 2 is. So the change is we see this +1. And this +1 is in the exponent. So I need to go back up to my rules. And I see the exponent is what I circled in red. That's when things are raised. and we said it's plus, so that's a move to the left. That's a left. And what it was, the number left 1, so I'm just going to say left 1. And that's it. Okay, number 3 and number 4. We're assuming in number 3 that our original equation was 1/4 to the x, and we're just assuming that because that's what the directions said up at the beginning. Take a minute to try to figure out what the difference between what I just wrote was and what's printed for number 3 is. That's right, we see a big +1 at the very end of the equation. And that is not in the exponent. So I'm going to go up towards my rules again. And that big green circle at the end tells me the rules for the movements that bring me up and down. So up will be plus, down will be minus. So let's look at this. So that's up because it's plus. So I say up 1. One more that we're going to do in this section, and then we're going to try a few more about that look a little bit different. So I'm going to start. I see y equals 1/2 to the x was our original equation. So take a minute to look at that equation and look at what was printed and try to see if you can figure out what the difference is. Okay, so we see a -1 right here. So I'm going to go back up to my rules. And remember, you guys can pause this video at any time and write these rules down. I know I'm the type that likes to take a lot of notes, even if I don't look at them later on. It's good to have it. It helps me remember when I write it down. So if you wanted to pause it and write the rules down, you can definitely do that. So I see down is minus. So right here, my rule would say down 1. Cool. Let's do a few more, and then we're going to have you try some on your own. So here they told us what the parent function is, and we have to just automatically look at these and see what the difference is. So from here, I'm looking at A. I have 2 to the x, and then I have 2 to the x minus 2. So I'm going to give you guys like 30 seconds to try to see if you can figure out what that changes. Okay, so I have a -2 in the exponent. So I'm going to go back up to my rules, and I'm going to see I have an exponent move. Minus is to the right. So what the change was here is it was right 2. Let's look at B. So I have 3 to the x, and then I have 3 to the x minus 2. That -2 is not in the exponent. So I'm going to go back up here. I'm going to say, okay, minus is down if it's not in the exponent. So that is down 2. Sorry about my D. I did not draw that very well. Sometimes they're going to take multiple transformations or translations, and we're going to have to do them within the same statement. So that's what C is doing. But don't worry, it's the same exact thing as what we were doing before. We're just going to list both moves that were made. So if we look at C, I have a +4 inside the exponent. I'm going to go back up to my rules. In the exponent, if it's plus, that means it's going to the left. So I'm going to say this right here is left 4. And then we have this +7 on the outside. So if I go back to my rules, if I can get my cursor here, yep. I see that that plus is up, minus is down. I see +7, so I say up 7. So I just read from left to right and wrote the changes as they happened. So I had +4, which was left 4, +7 was up 7. So that's the first video that shows you how to do left, right, up, and down. You can do this section of work, and then make sure you watch the next video to figure out about the reflections. Talk to you soon.